Hello, wonderful people. Thanks for joining me today in our next iLit lesson, D2.33. Today we will focus on main idea, vocabulary knowledge, and applying what you've learned. Let's get started. Before we talk about main idea today, let's refresh our brains about what we read yesterday in Autistic Teens Hoop Dreams Come True. We also want to remember our essential question of where do I fit in? So if we start off, who is Jason McEwen? Well, if you remember, he's a student with autism who works as a team manager for the school's basketball team. Think about how Jason fit in with the team. He was encouraged by the team and he encouraged them. And when he finally got a chance to play, he scored 20 points in the game. Today we are going to read an informational text in the form of a speech. A speech is a spoken presentation of an idea, thought, or feeling. Many speeches are so famous that they are reprinted to be read rather than listened to. Today I will be reading a speech by President Barack Obama called Out of Many. I would like you to think about how we summarize a text. Notice the main idea. What is the main or most important idea? And what supporting details help us to know this? How is it proven? Here's some background information for you. Barack Obama was the first African American elected to be President of the United States. Out of Many by Barack Obama. The following is an excerpt from a speech made by Barack Obama on March 18, 2008 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. It was part of his 2008 campaign to become President of the United States. In this excerpt, he addresses the issue of racism and highlights the importance of helping all Americans, no matter what their background, feel that they belong. Two things jump out at me right away after I read this. The introduction says that this is an excerpt from the president's speech. An excerpt is a small part of something that is bigger. So I know that this is just a small part of his speech. The next part is going back to our essential question. What does racism have to do with belonging? Well, people who face racism in this country can feel like outsiders, as if they don't belong. So this would be a really important point. Let's read on. I am the son of a black man from Kenya and a white woman from Kansas. I was raised with the help of a white grandfather who survived a depression to serve in Patton's army during World War II, and a white grandmother who worked on a bomber assembly line at Fort Leavenworth while he was overseas. I've gone to some of the best schools in America, lived in one of the world's poorest nations. I am married to a black American who carries within her the blood of slaves and slave owners, an inheritance we pass on to our two precious daughters. I have brothers, sisters, nieces, nephews, uncles, and cousins of every race and every hue, scattered across 3 continents, and for as long as I live, I will never forget that in no other country on earth is my story even possible. It is a story that hasn't made me the most conventional candidate, but it is a story that has seared into my genetic makeup the idea that this nation is more than the sum of its parts, that out of many, we are truly one. Here I see the term genetic makeup used. I want you to think about that. What do you think genetic makeup means? If I were to put it into words, I might say that our genes are the building block of who we are. I'm also starting to think about what is the purpose of this speech. Now, if I were to guess, it would be to inform people about our varied backgrounds as a nation and to persuade people to be more tolerant to each other's backgrounds. To do this, he starts to tell us more about himself. In fact, I've learned something new. I see in the sidebar that President Obama lived in Indonesia as a child from 1967 to 1971 with his mother and stepfather. I didn't know that. Throughout the first year of this campaign, against all predictions to the contrary, we saw how hungry the American people were for this message of unity. Despite the temptation to view my candidacy through a purely racial lens, we won commanding victories in states with some of the whitest populations in the country. In South Carolina, where the Confederate flag still flies, we built a powerful coalition of African Americans and white Americans. Here we see the word coalition in a different color. That gives us the hint that it must be an important word. Based on the context clues about the president's talking about the message of unity with white and black Americans, and the fact that it starts with a CO, and I think of together, coalition must mean doing something together or for a purpose. I would not be running for president if I didn't believe with all my heart that this unity is what the vast majority of Americans want for this country. This union may never be perfect, but generation after generation has shown that it can always be perfected. And today, whenever I find myself feeling doubtful or cynical about this possibility, what gives me the most hope is the next generation. The young people whose attitudes and beliefs and openness to change have already made history in this election. Here I see that they've given us some definitions, which sometimes happens at the bottom of a page. So now we know that cynical also means not hopeful. Knowing that our essential question is where do I fit in, I notice that the president's speech is about being more accepting of people of all genetic makeups to form a perfect union. The president's speech is about helping all people to fit our country's vision. I also notice that the president has a lot of hope for the next generation. This could be because younger people are often more open to change and diversity than many older Americans. Let's go back and examine this speech again. This time, I would like you to think about what is the central idea of this speech. Also, what kind of supporting details do you think the president will have? Out of Many by Barack Obama. The following is an excerpt of a speech made by Barack Obama on March 18, 2008 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. It was part of his 2008 campaign to become President of the United States. In this excerpt, he addresses the issue of racism and highlights the importance of helping all Americans, no matter what their background, feel that they belong. As I think about the central idea of this speech, I really think it could be about helping people feel like they belong in this country, no matter their race. Here is a recording of Barack Obama giving his speech.
For my own story, I'm the son of a black man from Kenya and a white woman from Kansas. I was raised with the help of a white grandfather who survived a depression to serve in Patton's army during World War II, and a white grandmother who worked on a bomber assembly line at Fort Leavenworth while he was overseas. I've gone to some of the best schools in America, and I've lived in one of the world's poorest nations. I am married to a black American who carries within her the blood of slaves and slave owners, an inheritance we pass on to our two precious daughters. I have brothers, sisters, nieces, nephews, uncles, and cousins of every race and every hue scattered across 3 continents, and for as long as I live, I will never forget that in no other country on earth is my story even possible. It's a story that hasn't made me the most conventional of candidates, but it is a story that has seared into my genetic makeup the idea that this nation is more than the sum of its parts, that out of many, we are truly one.
Let's go through and examine together what phrases express Barack Obama's main point in this part of his speech. Now, a big one would be his last phrase of that out of many, we are truly one. Here he is saying that although we are very different, we are also unified or one people. And he is saying that his own life is an example of many differences. Let's look at how well Barack Obama gets his point across to us. Many and one are antonyms or opposites. There are other pairs of antonyms that he uses throughout the first part of his speech to show the differences in his own life. We see black man, white woman, best, poorest, slaves, slave owners, brothers, sisters, nieces, nephews. Do you think Barack Obama supports his idea of many differences?
Throughout the first year of this campaign, against all predictions to the contrary, we saw how hungry the American people were for this message of unity. Despite the temptation to view my candidacy through a purely racial lens, we won commanding victories in states with some of the whitest populations in the country. In South Carolina, where the Confederate flag still flies, we built a powerful coalition of African Americans and white Americans. I would not be running for president if I didn't believe with all my heart that this is what the vast majority of Americans want for this country. This union may never be perfect, but generation after generation has shown that it can always be perfected. And today, whenever I find myself feeling doubtful or cynical about this possibility, what gives me the most hope is the next generation. The young people whose attitudes and beliefs and openness to change have already made history in this election.
How would you summarize how President Obama feels about the next generation? If you think perhaps that the president has high hopes for the next generation and that they will be more open to all people regardless of what they look like or where they come from, I think you would be right. Here we see a picture of Bethany Hamilton. Oftentimes, just like a narrative essay, a photo tells a story. If you don't know the story of Bethany, let me tell you. She was surfing in Hawaii when a shark attacked her. She lost her left arm, but not her determination to continue surfing. Her story was so compelling that a book and a movie were made of her attack. Today we'll be focusing in on important elements of a narrative writing, such as character, setting, and sequence of events. For your final unit project, you're going to be asked to write a narrative essay. You will also be giving oral presentations. You will have a chance to practice before the official presentation, but know that that's where we're going with this unit. To help you, think about an exciting experience you had. Write a narrative essay that describes your experience and explains why it was so exciting. I'll be looking for a well-defined setting with details that readers can visualize, a clear logical sequence of events, believable, interesting characters, and a first-person point of view. A narrative essay is a true story in which the writer is the leading character. Like fiction, the writing takes place in the form of a story. However, a narrative essay is nonfiction because the events actually happened. Please notice that your checklist is composed of 6 main things. Ideas. Do you tell the story of an exciting experience you had? Do you explain what was exciting about the story? Does your story include real people, a setting, and a sequence of events? Organization. Is your sequence of events in a clear, logical order? Do you use transition words to guide readers from one event to the next? Voice. Are you writing in a way that connects with readers? Are you writing in first person using I, me, we, and us? Word choice. Are your words specific enough to help readers visualize your setting and experience? Are your words appropriate and interesting? Sentence fluency. Do you use a variety of sentence types? Does your writing flow naturally when you read it aloud? Conventions. Do you use standard grammar and punctuation? Do you avoid spelling mistakes? Do you remember to capitalize? Narrative essay topic, yes or no. Text 1. A story in the first person, I, we, about a trip to Mars. Yes to first person, no to Mars. Text 2. A story in third person, he, she, them, about a group of friends meeting their favorite singer. No to third person, yes to their favorite singer. Text 3. A story in the first person about a boy's first time riding a roller coaster. Text 3 has both first person and a roller coaster. That one would be a go. Text 4. A story in the first person about a girl's experiences playing the lead role in a musical. Yes to both criteria again. Let's do a quick comprehension check. Read the following essay titles. Which title is most likely a narrative essay? A. A biography of Abraham Lincoln. B. The Day I Got My Dog. C. Computer Programming for Beginners. Or D. Erica and the Magical Minivan. So B. The Day I Got My Dog would probably be the best answer. Let's review. Elements of a narrative essay. Tells a true story about you, the writer. Uses the words I, me, and we, first person. Tells the events in a logical order. Has real people and takes place in a real setting. Thanks for joining me today. Please make sure to download the Word Slam PDF document. You can use Quizlet to write down the definitions. Your assignments in iLit are Word Slam and the phonics reader Make Tacos. Thanks for all your hard work today. I look forward to talking with you tomorrow.